Hello and welcome to Ani's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Haunted Hotel. The Grand Isle Hotel had stood on the Isle of Wight's coast for centuries, its walls whispering tales of aristocrats and artists, politicians and wanderers. With its stained glass windows, sprawling corridors, and antique chandeliers, the hotel was a relic from another time, bearing the scars and stories of countless souls. Holly Arnold checked in one October evening, lured by rumors of the hotel's supernatural history. She hadn't yet seen the hotel, only heard of it from half-whispered legends that echoed through pubs and folklore books. The lobby was just as she imagined, vintage and gloomy, with dusty red carpets and grand oil paintings whose subjects seemed to follow her with their eyes. As the receptionist, a gaunt woman with hollow cheeks, handed her the keys, she warned, "Miss Arnold, you're our only guest tonight. If you hear unusual noises, try not to let them bother you. Old buildings, you know." Holly forced a smile and headed up the creaky stairs, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Room 413 was at the far end of the third floor, with peel-in wallpaper and furniture draped in shadows. She dropped her bags on the bed and glanced around, taking in the eerie silence. Just as she was about to unpack, a faint scratching sound drifted from the wall behind her. She dismissed it as the pipes or a mouse too seasoned in ghost lore to let herself get spooked so soon. But as the night deepened, the noises grew louder, whispers that seemed to pass through the walls, a haunting murmur of sorrowful voices. She heard a woman weeping, then the creak of footsteps that moved closer and closer to her door. Holly's heart pounded, and she clutched her phone tightly, debating whether to leave. Just then, her phone screen lit up with a notification. New message, "Don't trust the staff." There was no sender listed, and when she tried to reply, the message vanished. Holly shivered and checked her door, making sure it was locked, then decided to investigate. She slipped into the hallway, which was deserted, and let her curiosity guide her. As she wandered down the dimly lit corridor, she noticed portraits on the walls. They were of elegantly dressed women, all young and beautiful, each wearing the same despairing expression. Something flickered in her peripheral vision. Turning, she caught sight of a woman at the end of the hall, a fleeting figure in a vintage dress, her hair swept up in a style from decades past. She stood in front of room 407, staring directly at Holly. Before Holly could speak or approach, the figure slipped through the door as if she were made of mist. Holly's pulse quickened. She couldn't resist following, even though every instinct screamed at her to turn back. She pushed open the door to room 407, revealing a dimly lit chamber with mirrors covering nearly every surface. The air felt colder here, heavy with something Holly could only describe as a presence. She took a step inside, the floor creaking underfoot, and saw a journal lying on the bed. She picked it up, flipping through the brittle pages. Each entry was a desperate plea for help, signed by a different guest over the years. "They're watching. If the staff is in on it. Once you check in, you can never leave." Holly's hands trembled, and she quickly shut the book, her mind racing. Just then, a voice echoed from behind her. "They never tell you about us, do they?" Holly whirled around to find the ghostly woman she had seen in the hall. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, as if they had been drained of life. The woman extended a gloved hand, her fingers icy cold as they brushed Holly's arm. "They don't want you to know what happened here." "To us who?" Holly stammered. "Victims," the woman replied. "Guests, just like you, drawn by the hotel's allure, trapped by its secrets. We were all killed here, our souls bound to this place by the hotel's curse." Holly's throat tightened, and she backed away. But as she turned to leave, the door slammed shut, locking her inside. She jiggled the doorknob, pounding on the door, but it was no use. She was trapped, just like the souls in the journal. "Please," she pleaded. "How do I get out?" "There's only one way. You must find the source, the heart of the curse, the cellar." Before Holly could react, the woman faded away. Determined, Holly dashed out into the hallway, her eyes scanning for a staircase that would lead to the cellar. She stumbled down a narrow, spiraling staircase, the shadows around her growing thicker with each step. The cellar was a cavernous space, filled with musty relics and discarded furniture. A cold draught swept through the room, carrying with it a smell of decay. In the center of the room stood a worn altar, stained with what looked like dried blood. Symbols were carved into its surface, strange and unfamiliar, each one more sinister than the last. A journal lay open on the altar, filled with entries that documented the hotel's dark history. The final entry read, "The curse binds all who stay. To free yourself, you must end the cycle, destroy the altar, and sever the tie." Holly hesitated, then grabbed a heavy candlestick and swung it down on the altar with all her strength. The stone cracked, releasing a surge of dark, cold energy that sent her flying backward. The air filled with a cacophony of anguished screams, as if every trapped soul were finally being released. But something lingered. A shadow, darker than the cellar itself, rose from the shattered altar, forming into a figure the original hotel owner, his face twisted with rage. He lunged at Holly, his fingers like claws, but she held up the candlestick as a shield, her fear giving her strength. She swung again, and the figure dissipated, its form dissolving into nothingness. Panting and shaken, Holly staggered back up the stairs, bursting into the dawn light just as the hotel began to crumble. She watched as the once grand building collapsed, its dark secrets finally laid to rest. She knew she had escaped, but the faces of those lost souls, their whispers and cries would forever haunt her dreams. As she walked away, Holly glanced back one last time, watching as the morning sun bathed the ruins of the Grand Isle Hotel. She had survived, but she knew the hotel's curse would linger, waiting for its next guest. Holly thought she'd be relieved as the Grand Isle Hotel crumbled into rubble behind her, but an unsettling dread clung to her. The morning sunlight felt feeble, thin against the chill that seemed to have seeped into her bones during her night in the cursed hotel. She turned away from the ruins and walked down the narrow, winding road back to the village, her steps feeling heavier with each passing minute. When she reached the small village square, she noticed something strange. The air was too still, and there was no sign of life. The usual bustle of early morning activity, fishermen prepping their boats, children laughing on their way to school, was replaced by an eerie silence. Holly glanced around, hoping to find someone who could confirm that she was truly free of the hotel's dark grip. She pushed open the door to the nearest shop, a cozy-looking pub that doubled as a cafe in the mornings. The bell above the door chimed, but there was no one at the counter. She called out, but her voice only echoed in the empty space. Just as she was about to leave, she noticed a newspaper lying open on one of the tables. The date on the paper was yesterday's, but the headline sent a chill through her. "Mysterious collapse of historic Grand Isle Hotel leaves local shocked." Holly frowned. There hadn't been time for any news about the collapse to spread. She'd only just left the hotel ruins herself. How could it already be reported? She scanned the article, but the details were chillingly vague. It mentioned that the hotel had been abandoned for nearly a century, a stark contrast to her own experience. She distinctly remembered checking in, speaking to the receptionist, seeing guests in the halls, hadn't she? Her heart hammered as she raced out of the pub and headed toward the village library, desperate to confirm what she'd read. She searched the archives, and sure enough, there was a history of the Grand Isle Hotel, detailing its closing in 1924 following a series of mysterious deaths. A photograph accompanied the article, showing a group of people gathered in the hotel lobby. Holly's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the faces, including the receptionist who had handed her the key. The last line of the article was what undid her. "Rumors of hauntings persist, but the hotel has been abandoned ever since the owner's death. No living person has entered those walls since." Her mind reeled. Had she been lured there by the spirits themselves? Was she their intended last guest? But then, how had she escaped? She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A heavy weight pressed down on her shoulders, as if she hadn't truly left the hotel at all. She wandered back outside, trying to shake the eerie feeling that clung to her, when she noticed an old woman sitting on a bench, watching her intently. "Excuse me," Holly stammered, hoping for some comfort in a friendly face. "Do you know what happened to the Grand Isle Hotel?" The woman's eyes gleamed with an unsettling awareness. "That place has always drawn the curious ones, people with questions, like you," she said. "But beware, dear. Once you've stayed there, It never really lets you go. Holly backed away, her mind spinning. She reached for her phone, needing some tangible reminder of reality, only to find an unread message flashing on her screen. Heart pounding, she opened it. "You can check out any time, Holly, but you'll always be one of us now." She dropped the phone, horror spreading through her. As she looked down, a new realization washed over her. Her reflection in a shop window was fading, becoming translucent. She reached out to touch her hand to the glass, but her fingers passed right through it. The weight pressing down on her became unbearable, a chain binding her back to the hotel. She tried to scream, to run, to break free, but it was as if invisible hands were holding her in place. Her last thought before the world went dark was a final, cold truth: the hotel hadn't released her. She had only become part of its history, another ghost in its haunted halls, forever tied to the Isle of Wight, waiting for the next guest to check in. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.